to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know.
Hi everyone, this is Matt. Welcome back to Touchgrass Gardening. Today we're going to do a full backyard tour. And as promised in the last video, we made it over 500 subscribers. So I wanted to show you my entire backyard. Not just the rare and tropical trees that we showed last time, but everything that's here, so that you can get an idea of what I'm growing. And then if you want to learn more, I can do a deeper dive on this or that area or this or that tree. So let's get going. So when we first moved into the house 3 years ago, there were several large mature trees on the property, but I was really overwhelmed on where to put the things that I wanted in the yard. And so I created a map that would plot where I wanted things before I planted them, and then I could keep it straight and move things around before I actually planted. And that helped me to create and bring my vision into fruition.
This is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out.
So here in this area of my yard, it's morning shade, afternoon sun. And so only hardy trees will survive in this type of area. And so to my right, I have this Arizona sweet orange. I've talked about this tree a bit in the video about my 13 varieties of citrus. This is one of our favorite oranges because we love to juice oranges. And this is just a super sweet variety that juices very well. And so we have a lot of citrus. This is one of my favorites. Speaking of fruit trees, we also have a Pakistan mulberry here, which is only 2 years old. And you can see how big this tree is already. And part of why people love mulberry trees is because you get the fruit within 2 years. You can see on this tree already, there's probably 150 mulberries. And this is just in the ground for 2 years from a small little twig. And this is gonna turn purple in about a week and then become sweet and be ready to eat. And the birds also love mulberries. And that's why I have this bird scare tape on the tree, because last year we lost a lot of the mulberries to birds. And this year I'm gonna be a bit more diligent about how to protect the fruit so that we can eat it ourselves. And a mature tree in our yard is this Australian bottle tree, which is one of my favorite trees, surprisingly, because it's not a fruit tree, but it just has this beautiful, unique look with, weeping branches. It has a trunk that woodpeckers love, so it has this type of pattern that's unique. To me, it kind of reminds me of that weirwood tree from Game of Thrones. These patterns all kind of look like eyes to me. So when I come out here, I'm like, wow, this is such a unique, fun, cool tree. And bottle trees are ones that you do see sometimes in Arizona, but rarely do you see one that's 40 feet tall. And so I just really love this tree and suggest it as kind of a hardy landscape type of tree. The last tree I'm going to show in this zone is this Tahitian pomelo. This is a green pomelo, somewhat unique look, is also one of the highest rated flavors. And so this tree has been through both summer and winter here for me, has done well. I didn't put any protection beyond just planting it here. And so you can see how hardy citrus is, even when it's small. And that's really why I love citrus, and that's why it survives in this type of zone. Now we're entering a full sun zone, and behind me is one of my favorite trees in my yard, and that's the rainbow eucalyptus. And you can see it's a well-known tree. You don't often see it in people's yards because it's so big, but you can see the trunk is where it gets its name, where it has this beautiful pattern that has a rainbow of colors. And this is a 3-year-old tree, so it's not the most mature tree yet. And the trees that you see online when you think about this tree are older trees that have that huge rainbow pattern. So as this tree grows, it gets more and more of that rainbow pattern I already think it's really beautiful just at 3 years old. And this is a super fast growing tree. So this is probably a 25, 30 foot tall tree. It grows a ton in the summer, loves the sun, but it does die back a little bit each winter after a freeze. So it's the type of tree that if you're in a warmer climate will work for you, but if it's not, if it's gonna freeze, you might wanna think about like, how do I protect it? So the next one I wanna talk about is this white mulberry. Similar to the Pakistan mulberry, it has the type of fruits that you're gonna see in the spring. This is also known as a green mulberry, and they turn sweet about a week earlier than the Pakistan mulberry, at least for me. And so a lot of them are gone already because my daughter will just come out here and eat them. And so when I can't find her, I'm like, oh, where is she? And then I look at the mulberry tree and she's under it. So that's been the experience of the last 2 weeks. And so there's not much fruit left, but this tree has grown really well and it's only been in the ground about a year. And so the next tree I'm going to talk about is this Valentine pomelo. Similar to the Tahitian pomelo, I planted at the same time, so it's been through a summer and a winter, and it has a lot of growth. You can see the more sun it has, the faster it's going to grow for a citrus. And I think, in a couple of years, we're going to see some fruit. The one next to it is a Vernon white sapote. This is an area that is full sun. So I was looking for a hardy fruit tree, but I had a lot of citrus already, so I was looking for something different. And so this sapote is one that I'm probably going to protect a little bit from the sun in the summer. It's only been through a winter, hasn't been through a summer. So in the first summer, you're going to protect these sapote trees, and after that, it should be fine on its own. So this area is also full sun, where it's on the south side of my first ring of trees, and so it's mostly hardy trees as well. And so I'm going to show you what I've decided to plant here. The first is this red wonderful pomegranate. This is about a 2.5-year-old tree. We got maybe 10 pomegranates last year, and I think we're going to get similar or slightly more again this year. There's some beautiful blooms on it already. I think pomegranate is really a underused tree, particularly in my area, because it's so hardy, so easy. It doesn't take a ton of water, and it can take full sun and provides amazing fruit. So pomegranate is one that I highly recommend. Now I've planted a couple more citrus trees in the front here. This is a Chandler red pomelo. I do love pomelos, as you can tell. Our family just orders a lot of pomelos, so now I have 3 pomelo trees. This one's about a year old, is flowering, has just finished flowering, and is now about to set fruit, but I might leave 1 fruit on there if I get greedy. But you can see this tree is happy here. It has pretty much full sun all day. The next one that just had an explosion of blooms this spring is this Oro Blanco, a grapefruit. And so this tree is, I think it's 2 years old now, but I bought it as kind of a bigger 24-inch box tree. And we got a couple fruits on it already. And Oro Blanco is just a delicious, kind of sweet grapefruit that has a more pomelo type texture. So is a tree that I highly recommend. And 2 other mature citrus trees that I've talked about before in my other videos is this, again, an Arizona Sweet, which was here when we moved in. And then next to it is this Tangelo tree, which is the largest citrus in our yard and just provides almost too much fruit. But Tangelo is one of my favorites to just eat straight because it's both a little bit sweet and tart. Now walking back where this is kind of moving back a little bit to the north, there's a apricot tree. This was already here. Apricots are decent for us, but the birds normally eat most of these apricots just because the tree is pretty large now. I've kind of loathed to cut it way back so I can protect every single apricot. I just sort of let the birds eat them, and we get a few when we want them. But this tree is actually really beautiful. It has beautiful blooms in the spring and then has fruit that'll ripen in May. So this is a Katy apricot. Next to this is a mature bonita ash, and this is one that provides a fair amount of shade for a couple trees that I have next to it. Ash trees are heavily used in the Arizona area where I live because they're deciduous and they somewhat change color in the fall, so the leaves turn yellow, which you don't see a lot of in my area. So people do love ash trees. They're a little bit messy in the fall, but I use those leaves for mulch now, and I'm becoming more and more a fan of ash trees because it can provide sun in the winter to trees next to it and then protect those trees in our harsh summers. So this is a afternoon shade area, morning sun, and right here is a St. Mary Magnolia. It's actually about to bloom, I'm just noticing, and it's protected by the bonita ash that I just mentioned. So it's only getting sun until about noon or so, and that'll protect these thick leaves and let those blooms last a little bit longer, because magnolia is a tree that does burn up a little bit in our climate. But it has been evergreen, so it didn't lose any of its leaves in our winter, which actually surprised me because my thought of magnolia is that it's one that does lose its leaves. And next to it in this morning sun area is a purple longan. So I've mentioned a few different longans in my previous video, but this one is unique because of its color. So this one stays purple, and I haven't seen it fruit yet, but I've read stories online that it's a unique fruit, it's a different type of longan, and it's one that I wanted in my yard because you don't see that much of a purple fruit tree around here. And so that's why I went and planted this, because we love the taste of longan. Now, next to the longan is one of the trees that has actually struggled in my yard, and it's this red barren peach tree. And every year it keeps dying back a little bit more. And this year I just decided to just cut it way back, because this used to be a 25-foot tall tree. And so I kept cutting until I could see where it was alive, and that was about right here. You can see we've got about 4 peaches, but I don't know how much longer this tree is actually going to live, because I think it's about a 20-year-old tree, and this type of stone fruit tree generally will not live that much longer than 20, 25, 30 years. So I'm thinking about what I'm going to plant here in the future, potentially, but this red barren actually has really beautiful blooms in the spring, so it's actually a tree we loved. It just hasn't really done that well, and I think it's because it gets a little bit too much shade when it wants to flower, but then in the summer, when the sun is completely straight up and down and it's not getting protection from the trees next to it, it just really gets burnt by that sun. So it's in a little bit of an awkward position where in the spring and winter it's shaded, and then in the summer it's getting full sun. So this type of position is a little bit difficult for most trees, and that's why you're seeing this peach suffer. Now next to it, which is also in a similar position as the peach, I thought, what is kind of a hardier fruit tree? And I went with a sapote. So over there I had a Vernon sapote. This is a Suebel sapote. And I've read that these trees are actually quite hardy. And when I saw this at a nursery, I thought I want an evergreen tree in this spot that also provides fruit, but I need one that's hardy. And I have enough citrus in my yard where I was looking for something different, and that's why I went with a sapote. Right now it seems to be doing really well. It's only been in there since this past fall, so it has only just gone through a winter uncovered and did fine. We'll see how it does in summer, but again, if it has that all-day sun, in the first year I'm going to protect a sapote. So here in another full sun zone, this is also morning shade, afternoon sun, And I have 2 deciduous trees in front and then a Lisban lemon behind me. And the reason that I chose to do it this way is because the lemon fruit is ripening in the winter after these 2 trees will lose its leaves. And so this is a Nixon piece fig. This is actually only about 1.5 years old. We haven't gotten fruit yet, but the tree is beautiful. I think it's probably going to fruit this year, but it's a unique tree that has a fun story around the Nixon delegation that was given it when they visited China. So I thought, because I've lived in China, I wanted this tree. And so this is a Nixon piece. And then next to it is this Nectaplum. So it's a mixture of a nectarine and a plum hybrid. And what really drew me to this tree is the purple leaves, because my wife always tells me that we have too much green in the yard. She wants more colors. And so she wanted more purple trees. And you can see that this tree has really purple, beautiful leaves. And it's gonna be a unique fruit that we've never had before, that you're not gonna find in most grocery stores. So I'm really excited about this Nectaplum that I just planted a few weeks ago.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne?
So this is the tropical zone of my yard, and you can see that on the south side of this zone is a big live oak tree. And this is an evergreen tree that provides filtered sun to all the tropical trees that I have behind it. And then because this is on the western side of my yard where I have an oleander hedge, it's only getting morning sun and filtered sun. So for those sensitive type of tropicals, in my area where I live in Arizona, I really can't have these in full sun, at least most of them. And so you really need to think about, how do I get that morning sun or filtered all day sun? And that's what this area provided for me. And that's when we first bought the house, I was like looking in the backyard and thinking, this area is perfect for tropicals. And that's why I planted how I have. And so, you know, the first one, I've talked about these trees in the previous video, but you can see just from last week how much these loquats have grown. It's almost hanging on the ground already. I might have to bring this back up, but these loquats are just beautiful, and the tree, evergreen, like shade, is in filtered all day sun. Next to it is this Mauritius lychee, and this is continuing to flower, looking good, still hoping for fruit, but is about 2.5 years in ground, and since I planted it, it's about doubled in size. And this Mauritius lychee is a fairly sensitive tree, but because it's an all-day filtered sun and I give it a lot of water, it's doing well here in our desert climate. Now, next to the Mauritius lychee is this Hass avocado. I have 6 avocados in my yard, and this is the one that's doing the worst. So for whatever reason, this Hass avocado is not happy where it's at. Even with the all-day filtered sun, last summer, it got burned pretty hard. So I cut off the top half of it where it was all black. And so ever since I did that, it's never really recovered. And you can see that even in all-day filtered sun behind an oak tree, avocados still struggle. Particularly, I've read Hass avocados. So you might want to think about a hardier version of avocado if you're in a climate like mine. And so an avocado variety that's done really well for me is this Zutano avocado. And you can see tons of new growth, flowers. It's just really a beautiful tree that's doing well. Again, this one burned on the top just like my Hass, but after I cut this one off and protected it with some white paint, it grew back. So it's growing back everywhere. So that's why I'm still holding out hope for my Hass avocado, because I saw with the Zutano that it can grow back. And again, this is getting that morning filtered sun. Now, next to the Zutano is a couple Longan trees. And originally these were quite small, and I thought one of them would die because they both looked pretty rough when I planted them. It was at like a super cheap clearance sale at one of the local tropical nurseries. So I just put them both in the ground. Like, one of them will live, hopefully. But then they both lived. And now you can see that they're both doing reasonably well. This Kohala Longan is actually doing better than this BQ Longan. And I think I'm just gonna let them both grow. I guess I could dig this one out and put it in a pot. But I actually think this type of tropical tree, they don't mind a bit more dense planting. And in my area, which is not in the tropics, trees don't get as big as if they were, say, in Hawaii or the jungles of Indonesia. Like, these are tropical trees that I can control with trimming. So I'm gonna leave them for now. We'll see over time if I change my mind. Right behind the Longan is this Super Alfonso mango. And I showed this last week, but you can see that there's even more blooms. I mean, over here, there's just beautiful amounts of blooming. I actually think there's more blooms this year than last year. And I did a ton of trimming this spring because the tree was really weeping down, almost touching the ground in every area. And so I cut all that off and tried to shift the growth upward. And I think that somewhat stimulated the flowers because there's just less that the tree has to think about growing. And so this mango is doing quite well. And I'm excited about the fruit this year because we just love the mango fruit off our own tree. It's so much better than a grocery store. I actually have 2 miracle fruit trees that I put in the ground. One is doing poorly. The other one is doing a little bit better. I talked about the one that's doing a little bit better last week. And I'm thinking about potentially taking the one that's struggling out of the ground and putting it in a pot because it does get a little bit too much sun in this zone for a miracle fruit. I kind of figured that over time the mango and jackfruit would give it more shade, but I think that's just going to take too much time. And so I need to find a better area for this miracle fruit. But again, if you've never thought about or tried miracle fruit, it's one of the coolest fruits that you could ever try because it makes something that's sour taste sweet. Like if you have a miracle fruit and then you eat a lemon, the lemon actually tastes sweet. And then behind it is my jackfruit. And this is a black gold jackfruit. And it's been through both a summer and winter already. This will be the second summer for it. And it's putting on a lot of new growth now. And it's looking good. There's been some leaf loss this spring, but because there's still new growth, I think the tree is fine. This is far from its native climate, so I was worried about this tree. It's an experiment. I haven't really seen many jackfruits in Arizona, but because it's been through both the summer and winter, I think it's gonna survive here. And now the next goal is to try to get it to put on some fruit. So behind the jackfruit and in kind of this morning sun right next to the oleander hedge is my avocado seedlings. And this is the tree that really got me into gardening because during the pandemic, we just started throwing seeds in the ground or in a planter actually. And after a bunch of them started sprouting, we just kept it going. And when we moved from California to Arizona, we decided to put them in the ground. And as you can see, this is not just one tree. This is actually 3 trees that in that original planter, the roots were so tangled together, I just decided to plant all of them and see what would happen. And this is another one of the experiments in my yard that may end up to be a disaster at some point. But I think these trees are doing so well right now. It's possible I may need to cut the 2 outer ones down or the middle one down to give it more room to grow once the trunks meet each other. But I think just because this is such a sentimental tree to me, I'm not gonna do that. And I'm just gonna let it grow and see where it goes in life. And as you can see so far, it's just done wonderfully. It has some burn from the 25-degree Fahrenheit winter freeze we had this year, but it's still doing well and it'll recover. So this tree is, a seedling avocado can grow in Arizona. Behind it is another avocado. This is a Aravaipa avocado, and I actually think this is the avocado that's doing the best in my yard. It had a ton of flowers on it, but it doesn't have another pollinator in the yard yet. So once the other avocados get bigger, I expect it to put on some fruit. But it's still growing, doing well, and I'm excited about this tree. It's also in just morning sun, but as you go further back into the yard, it does get more and more sun, and that's why I put the hardier avocados further back, and Aravaipa is one of the hardier varieties of avocados that you can get. So if you're in Arizona, this is a variety that I highly suggest. This next avocado is a Fuerte, and I talked about this last week, but it has even more new growth on it now. Just a really beautiful tree that has struggled a lot in the past 2.5 years since I planted it, but then this spring has just exploded in growth. So this Fuerte avocado is one that I think is finally established, doing very well, and is one that I'm excited about in the future because it's surviving in, half of day sun here in Arizona. Now the last one I want to talk about is this Mexicola avocado. It gets a bit more shade just because it's in an awkward area behind this bamboo, but you can see all the new growth looks pretty good. It had also struggled in the last summer and winter, you can see from the old leaves, but now it's got a bunch of new lush growth. I'm not sure how well this is going to do in the long term because it doesn't get enough sun. It's almost like all day shade with a little bit of morning sun down here, but we'll see. I think this is also an area that I'm thinking about for privacy against the back of my property. So avocados are evergreen and is something that I wanted to have more of for pollinators for the other avocados that I'm excited about. So this side of the yard is mostly sun, and it's what I've planted stone fruits. So Pluerry, Pluot, and Plums here. So I have a few Pluots that you can see that I planted this past fall, but already have fruit on them. And I'm excited about these trees because Pluots are something that we tried once at a neighbor's house and just loved. So I thought to myself, I need to plant some Pluot trees of my own. And then that same neighbor also mentioned to me that Pluerries are really good. So that's also something we planted. And then in this area, we thought about what is gonna help pollinate those trees. And what we found is that a Santa Rosa plum is generally seen as one of the best pollinators for these type of Pluots and Pluerry trees. And so this is a plum tree here. And a few weeks ago, these all bloomed at the exact same time. And that's why they're all together, and that's why they help create more fruit by pollinating each other. And so that's really what this zone is all about, is having a specific area for this type of fruit. So this area is right before we go into the backyard. So it's between the backyard and the house. So we have like a nice lunch white picnic table here. And it's under 2 catalpa trees, which are generally landscaping trees, but are some of my favorite landscaping trees because it's deciduous. So for this type of area, I'm getting shade in the summer, but sun in the winter. And in a few weeks, this is just gonna be covered in blossoms. And it's the type of flower that actually lasts a long time. It continues to flower for months throughout the summer. So catalpa is actually a very underused tree, and you can shape it. Like you can see this is about at my head level, so I can walk under it, but it's also providing the shade for this whole area where we can come out here and eat or have guests over and eat in the shade even in the summer, which is really nice in a place like Arizona.
about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, down with my own doubts. Be free with me. Be free. Be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Oh, yeah. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, down with my own doubts. Be free with me. Be free. Be free with me. Be free. Be free with me. Yeah, let's go. Be free with me. Oh, come on and let's go. Let's be free with me. Yeah, be free. Be free. Be free with me.
So this has been the first half of the full backyard tour. Please subscribe so that you have the notification for when the second half drops and you can see the backyard in its entirety. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what tree you thought the most of, what you thought didn't really fit, and what you'd want to see a deeper dive on in the future. And I'll do future videos on that. And so please hit that like button and then subscribe for further content.
We're on the run, this is what we waited for.